Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tuesdays with Trailblazer, brought to you by TechEdge AI, the video podcast where we bring you the latest trends and insights in AI technology. Hello, Ryan. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. I'm very excited to have you on our podcast. I'm your host, Anjan, and today we will talk about Flexential, who is empowering the IT journey by offering tailored hybrid IT solutions. They aim to disrupt the IT industry with their platform Flex Anywhere, which provides integrated co-location, cloud, connectivity, and data services. And to share his journey, we have Ryan Mallory, Chief Operating Officer, Flexential. Ryan has 20 plus years of experience building high-performing technical teams for global hyper-growth technology companies. So without further ado, let's welcome Ryan. Ryan, how are you doing today?
Hey, Anjan, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you. I'm doing fantastic and looking forward to diving in on this topic with you.
Perfect, perfect. Sounds like a plan. I'm intrigued to know about your career spanning over 25 years. Share some key milestones on how you built and led high-performing technical teams that led to the position of Chief Operating Officer at Flexential.
You bet. It probably stems back to when I was in elementary school. And I can remember, the getting my first Commodore 64 and the floppy disk and using that and wanting to, just learn about programming and into technical capabilities with computers. And, that carried on through, my formative years in college. But when I really started to lean in and the internet started to take off, that's when I really jumped in with both feet and spent a lot of time working, but also doing a lot of self learning as well. Had some friends that were training for the CCIE when they were first coming out. Spent a lot of time in labs. Then I was at Cable and Wireless Americas, and they bought Exodus Data Center, so one of the first multi-tenant data center companies out there in the late 90s, early 2000s. And that's when it all clicked for me that, hey, listen, if you want to run a truly dynamic infrastructure, you've got to have the network, you've got to have the data center, and you have to have this services layer in between. And so, since then, I've been fortunate to work at some really fantastic companies like Digital Realty Trust, Equinix, and now Flexential. A lot of them have had that same kind of, close to being that breakout type of model. And we're in that stage right now with Flexential, and I'm extremely excited where things are going.
Fabulous. I mean, it's a great opportunity to speaking with you, because I see that you have almost covered everything, all the transition that we have seen in terms of digital,
Mhm.
in terms of the dot-com bubble. I mean, I
Yep.
see that you've almost observed everything. It's quite an interesting journey. Now coming to the product, Flexential offers a diverse set of hybrid IT solution. I mean,
Mhm.
can you elaborate on the Flex Anywhere platform and how it integrates the different set of services?
You bet. And so, what Flexential really wanted to do was set itself apart from just other data center operators that are out there that just build space and power. And so, the first iteration of the Flex Anywhere platform was a network backplane that connected every data center in a mesh format. And so that allowed us to really flatten the data center marketplace in the United States. So regardless of what type of application you had or what you wanted to deploy, we had those capabilities close to the vast majority of the population in the United States. We also had a private IT service capability, private cloud data protection type services. That was really powerful because you could look at, hey, what does this IT team want to do? Where do they want to take it? And that really helped in the early days of the private cloud adoption and moving the IT infrastructure out. We've really taken a step forward over the past 2.5 years, and most importantly, we launched a new product in January called Flexential Fabric, which is a tie-in component into that Flex Anywhere capability, single port provisioning to those public cloud and data protection assets, public IP, all the data center to data center interconnection, and public cloud. And so with that, we've got a professional services capability that allows you to have DevOps support, security support, or the networking component. So when you think that Flex Anywhere overall overarching product set, That's really it. It's a virtual CIO, CTO team that any company can embrace and make them look, act, and feel like the largest enterprise company out there. So it's really a differentiator and what got me so excited about wanting to come to Flexential.
Fabulous, fabulous. I also want to highlight or probably know more from you in terms of how you're being compliant. I mean, you're dealing with a large sum of data, and you've been talking about putting them all together and managing them through a variety of sources. So how are you being compliant with this entire set of data?
That's really, yeah, it's a really good question, and it's something that we take very, very serious. And so, we do have a compliance organization that ties in with our
Mhm.
security teams, both from the internal IT as well as on the professional services side. And so, we're very focused on ensuring that we're aligned with all the audit capabilities we need for ourselves, but also
Mhm.
for our customers. And we look at this from a physical and logical perspective, and making sure that we continue to be mindful of what's happening out in the world. I think that we've seen the threat capabilities, and as well as our threat vectors, meaning the exposure capabilities, with the increasing number of data centers, new product sets continue to go up. But we're really focused on trying to make sure that we're not only managing it ourselves, we're a good partner for our customers as well, because they are bringing outside access into a lot of their private deployments and their cages, and we're here to help them with that.
Fabulous, fabulous. Congratulations on being named the CRN Data Center 50 list for 2024, for the fourth consecutive year. I must say that's an achievement. What contributed to this consistent recognition in this prestigious industry ranking?
Sure. First and foremost, that whole group of companies that are recognized in that CRN 50 are just, top-notch organizations. It's really special to see how the market's grown and developed. And, I've spent time at some of the largest companies that were recognized in there. But, Flexential is something very, very special. And, when I came into the business 4 years ago, we really started to look at what do we want to be. We had this hybrid IT DNA with the cloud and data protection, the Flex Anywhere capabilities, a large scale data model. We really took this to the next step, and we started to focus on scaled edge product, which is 250 kW and above, to about 5 to 7 megawatts. So we were able to support some of those larger edge production nodes for
Mhm.
hyperscalers, AI in the enterprise. We have a very, very strong retail product, as well as in
Mhm.
that cloud and data protection. So if you think it and look at this product set, it's very, very unique in being able to cover that depth and breadth of capabilities inside the market. We're seeing this huge rush to go up into chase the massive AI and hyperscale requirements, the hundreds of megawatts. It's created a
Mhm.
vacuum that we are very, very happy to be at the forefront of and really address that. And I think that's been the big differentiator that's allowed us to continue to get that recognition. Is we're staying very, very true to who we are, and we're executing better than we ever have.
Fabulous, fabulous. I wish you remain in the list, and for
Yep.
more number of years, for the upcoming years. Also, I was inquisitive about your article, your Forbes article, the role of
Mhm.
hosted private cloud. So could you elaborate on the key learnings of the article?
Sure. The hosted private cloud capabilities are something I'm extremely passionate about because it's needed. And, we've
Mm-hmm.
heard this big rush to, public cloud first mindset, but there's
Mm-hmm.
really this area of, being able to still control some of your infrastructure, to being able to then scale up, scale down as you need it, but control your critical applications, and some of those that aren't ready to go to the public cloud yet or may never be. And so, when you
Mm-hmm.
really start to think about how important it is, you need to have great application profiles and understand what type of applications are meant for the public cloud, meaning that they may need to have special kind of DMZ capabilities and requirements where they can be segmented off. And they may or may not be hyper chatty, because that's where the egress
Mm-hmm.
fees come into play, versus what do you want to really contain and control yourself on private cloud in more of a controlled environment that sits inside a multi-tenant data center. And so, when you start to look at what's happening now. We're seeing, with this inflationary pressure out in the world, just the need for companies, enterprise companies, to be much more efficient with their IT spend. They're trying to plan
Mhm.
for what they're going to do with AI, but that hosted private cloud is still the cornerstone of their infrastructure. It's not going to go away. And candidly, we continue to see that be one of the largest adopted product sets that we have outside, space and power.
Can't agree more. I mean, that's quite insightful. Now, looking ahead, what initiatives or strategies is Flexential pursuing to further strengthen its position as a leader in the data center industry?
Yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't say it had a lot to do with AI. And so, that seems to be the trend. Just recently, we're starting to see some of these, edge or generative AI deployments really starting to take shape. And what I mean by that is that they're moving, the AI companies are moving from contract to, deployment to turn up. And so we're starting to see this spin up. And we're seeing more and more requests from the enterprise companies to get to this GPU as a service infrastructure. The
Okay.
CPU as a service public infrastructure that's out there inside the hyperscale public cloud infrastructure is not going away, never will. But this GPU as a service, that's what key companies like CoreWeave, Applied Digital, Lambda Labs, these are ones that you hear about all the time, really are out
True.
there in the forefront driving the industry. They're gonna continue to push on that. That's going to create a ripple down effect for the data center industry for space and power. But we're also now seeing an arms race take place for connectivity. This is something that
Mhm.
I don't think a lot of us thought about, a year and a half, 2 years ago when AI started to really ramp up. It's the connectivity arms race that's really going to kick up. And, we're really focused on how do we make sure that we're enabling that ecosystem capability for AI to the enterprise.
That sounds like a plan. I mean, that rings a lot of bells here. I've
Yeah,
been talking to a lot of CTOs, a lot of CIOs, and everybody is making sure that they're adapting AI in the fastest way possible and in the most meaningful way possible.
sure.
So yeah, in fact, what also delights me to ask is that, I see that you have a degree in international business, which
Yep,
is quite different than what you're doing today.
sure.
So what caused this pivot and how has it evolved your career?
Yeah, I grew up in a military family, and my parents worked for the government, so I lived all over the world, and so I was exposed to spending my secondary school years in Germany and going to school there. I've been all over the South Pacific. We've traveled all over through
Mhm.
Europe, and so it was really important to me to think globally and really want to participate in the global economy, and technology is the catalyst for the global economy. And so when I
True,
started to look at
true.
this and wanting to understand how important that is, and so it's a little different from an operator's background, but for me, I love different cultures. I love the diversity that's out there in the world. I
Mhm.
really love being in other countries, hearing about what's happening there, and the teams that I've been fortunate enough to lead around the world, they're people just like I am. They've got families. They're trying to make sure that their kids have the best education. They want to make sure that that everybody is growing and developing the right way. And it's just so exciting because it just always makes me feel so optimistic about the human race, is when you can get out there and see that and be part of it. And like I said, technology is the catalyst for growth.
Mhm. I agree. I totally agree with that. And I really admire the way you have put across, diversity and how you are, clubbing it within the business that you're running or the way you are trying to, make sure everything works at Flexential. That's great, Ryan. I enjoyed hosting you on our podcast, Tuesdays with Trailblazer, and thank you all for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review. And do check out Flexential, which provides a seamless digital customer experience to monitor and manage your hybrid IT environment in real time. Until next time, stay tuned with TechEdge AI for more insights into AI and technology. Till we meet again, signing off, your host, Anjan.